Hi everyone, I am here with chapter 6 of the Hardy Boys, the Viking Symbol Mystery. You behave, Cheryl. You gonna listen to the story?
No.
Brat. Come show everyone. Did you guys like to see Dottie Bear? This is her name, Dottie Bear. We named her after Dottie. I thought it looked like Dottie. That's why I bought it a few years ago. Down. There she is. There's Dottie Bear. Look at her. Okay. All right. Chapter 6 is called Canadian Giant. We left off, the boys were learning how to fly, and they were flying the water seaplane thing. I remember they collided in the hallway of the hospital there with this big guy in this red and black plaited shirt, and he was saying, "Bon Touré!" he exclaimed in a deep, booming voice, and he grabbed a hold of one of the boys when they fell backwards. He was strong-featured. He had a strong-featured face, was covered by a thick black beard, and he wore a red and black checkered wool shirt, dark pants, and heavy lace boots. Joe staggered backward against the impact, bumping against the wall. The stranger reached out a huge hand, grasped Joe by the arm, and steadied him on his feet. "Bon Touré!" he shouted again. So that's where we left off yesterday. So chapter 6, Canadian Giant. The fingers holding Joe were like a still vice. "So sorry," he apologized, staring up at the bearded man with whom he had collided. To his relief, Joe felt the powerful fingers relax their grip. "Carefully here," boomed the stranger in a strong French-Canadian accent. "You should always look where you're going, especially in a hospital." "We realize that, sir," Frank spoke up, "but we were hurrying to get to the police station." "Oh, the police," the big man said, his eyes narrowed. "You were here to see Monsieur Baker Jones, yes?" The three boys said yes. Joe recovered his breath as the big man studied the visitors for a moment. His eyes were piercing, black, and shaded by thick brows. "You're Pierre Caron?" Frank exclaimed suddenly. The man stepped back warily as he answered, I am Pierre Caron, but I am called Caribou." He cocked his head and asked seriously, "Who are you?" Frank introduced himself, Joe, and Chet, then explained the reason why they had come to see Baker Jones. "Does he speak now?" Caribou asked abruptly. "No," Joe answered him. "The nurse said he's still in a coma." "Bon Touré," the fur trapper exploded. "That is not good." He added that he had been given special permission by Baker Jones's doctor to visit the patient briefly every day, but he never changed. The woodsman added sadly, "I hoped today he would be better." Frank told Caribou that they would like to hear his account of the assault by the ruined stone thieves. "He will talk while we eat," Caribou said. He smiled broadly. "Come, let us go." The powerful giant marched ahead to the elevator, which took them to the lobby. He pushed open the heavy front door and went on without breaking stride. The three boys had to trot to keep up with Caribou, and they were still a few yards behind when he stopped at a crowded restaurant. As the trapper strode toward a table, three burly men shouted greetings to him from across the room. He grinned and waved at them vigorously. "My friends from the north," he said to the boys. The big French-Canadian ordered a meal of steak, potatoes, and gravy for all. "First we eat," he said, when Joe started to ask questions. The Hardys and Chet grinned at one another. Instinctively, they liked this excitable, forthright man of the woods. After they had finished the hearty meal, Caribou leaned back in his chair and relaxed. Frank quickly explained his father's connection with the ruined stone case and asked Paris Caron for details of the robbery. Monsieur Baker Jones asked me to come to his hotel room, Caribou began. I went and gave him the stone. He handed me $2,000 in new $100 bills. I signed a paper saying he had paid me. Then bon terre, 2 men rushed into the room. The trapper stopped to drink some hot coffee. What did they look like? Chet asked. Caribou wiped his beard with a red handkerchief and pushed his chair back from the table again. In his excitement he began to speak in his native Pontus. I could not see faces. Both wear rubber face masks. One man was very thin. He was wearing checkered jacket, black and white. Other man wear dark city clothes. The boys were excited. Then what? Joe urged him. Thin man's pal never speak. He waved gun, Caribou continued, and forced me to corner of room. Bon terre. His voice grew angry. The thin man want the stone. When Monsieur Baker Jones say no, he hit him on the head with a gun. The woodsman told the boys that the Englishman had collapsed. As Caribou had bent over him to help, the 2 gunmen had fled with the ruined stone and the $2,000. You think it was the 2 that left from the hospital? The Kelly that escaped from the hospital and the other guy was there and they took off in the car, remember? You think it was those 2 that stole it? And why? The Hardys exchanged quick glances. Frank voiced their thought aloud. The thin fellow could be a man we know as John Kelly. The brothers told Caribou the story. He is a slippery eel, growled the trapper. You think he come back here? I wouldn't doubt it, Frank replied. We aim to find him anyway. Where did you find the ruined stone? Joe asked Caribou. The boys listened intently to his story. I run my trap line between Fort Smith and Great Slave Lake, he began. 2-3 weeks ago I made trip to the north end of the lake. I find the stone on the beach and... Suddenly the burly giant broke off. He sprang up from his chair violently, knocking over the table. Dishes and glasses flew in all directions, shattering on the floor as Caribou dashed to the front door. Come on, Frank urged, leaping up. The 3 boys dashed outside. When they reached Caribou, he was standing on the sidewalk in front of the restaurant, his fists clenched and his cheeks flushed with anger. Bon terre, he boomed in rage. Scaraboo! What happened? Joe asked. Did you spot one of the thieves? No, but I saw Dulick, Caribou said, still looking up and down the street. That weasel. He robs my traps. If I catch him, bon terre, that will be his unlucky day. As they all walked back into the restaurant to pay their bill and settle for the broken dishes, Caribou explained that Abner Dulick also was a trapper. He had been stealing from Caribou's traps up north for a long time. Caribou once had given him a thrashing, but the big woodsman had never been able to catch him with any evidence. What's Dulick doing in Edmonton? Frank asked. I don't know, Caribou replied. Probably he sells my pelts, or maybe he here to get even with me for that beating. The giant shook his head disgustedly, then shrugged. I forget him for now, he said, and asked the boys, where you think to look for the men who robbed Monsieur Baker Jones and me? The Hardy boys said they thought perhaps the thieves would have traveled north to hide out with their loot. Caribou pounded his fist into the palm of his hand. Then I will be your guide, he offered. I will help trap the robbers. That would be great, Joe said with a grin. We'll need a guide in that country. I'll say, Chet declared thankfully. Our next move is to find out what the police here can tell us about the missing ruined stone, Frank said. Come on. Caribou led the way, stalking along the sidewalks as though he were still in the wilderness. At the ultra-modern police headquarters, the Hardys were directed to the office of Inspector Knight. He had new information for them, however. No new information. The Edmonton police, working with the Mounties, had traced all the leads they had on the missing ruined stone and stolen cash, but so far without success. "The last we heard," said the inspector, "was that a man with a gauze patch on his head had been seen in McMurray up the Athabasca River, but he has disappeared before we could question him." That's got to be John Kelly, because remember, he hit his head and it was all wrapped up when he escaped from the hospital. "Kelly again, I'll bet," Joe explained. Quickly, the Hardys revealed to the inspector their encounter with the suspect in Bayport, and that their hunch he might have returned to the Northwest Territories. "He may still be wearing a bandage on his head," Frank said. The official was keenly interested. "I'll have the fellow's description broadcast again." Frank also reported that a man perpetrating to be Fenton Hardy had wanted to see Mr. Baker Jones in the hospital. The officer made a note of this and wished the sleuths good luck. Caribou accompanied the boys to their hotel. When they walked into the lobby, the desk clerk stopped them. "Are you Frank and Joe Hardy?" he asked the brothers. "Yes." The clerk reached behind him into one of the guest mailboxes. "Here's a telephone message for you," he said, handing Frank an envelope. "What could it be?" Chet asked, peering over Frank's shoulder as he took out the note. "It's from home," Frank explained as he read the note aloud. "Phone immediately. Plans changed." Ooh, that's where it stops there with Chapter 6. So we'll have to come back again with Chapter 7 and see Whitewater is the next chapter to see how it goes. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed Chapter 6.